Vacation season is in full swing, but with an entire galaxy of over 1 million civilized planets and billions of cities to choose from, how could you ever hope to plan one? Why, by taking a cruise on one of these wonderful vessels, of course. I'm Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and these are the best vacation ships in Star Wars. Morenia. First up is the Morenia, a Gallifrey Yards star cruiser used as a casino ship during the time of the Galactic Civil War. Very little is known about this vessel, as secrecy was very important to its operators, protecting them from the prying eyes of the Empire. The ship spent most of its time in hyperspace to avoid being captured by Imperial patrols, and only occasionally slowed to sublight speeds to allow guests to board or disembark. While this would make it somewhat inconvenient to pay the ship a visit, it made it quite popular amongst wealthy smugglers, gamblers, and other nefarious sorts who also wanted to avoid Imperial entanglements. The Morenia's secrecy meant that the full list of its features and amenities is not public knowledge, but guests report that it featured a large parking complex for visiting starships, large casino floors, both standard staterooms and extravagant luxury suites, and more. Entertainment included a wide variety of performances from famous musicians, and of course various types of gambling, such as the simplified Kessel Sabacc. Occasionally, highly prestigious Sabacc tournaments were held aboard the Morenia, including one in 3 ABY that cost 700,000 credits to join, and offered the coordinates to a moon containing nearly 3 trillion tons of incredibly toxic Cypherite ore as the prize. Obviously, this means that the Morenia would not be a suitable destination for families looking for a bit of summer fun, but for the right type of traveler, it would be an experience like no other. The Morenia seemed to be about 820 meters long by 270 meters wide and 200 meters tall. It was probably fairly slow, perhaps around 750 kilometers per hour in atmospheric flight, with a Class 3 hyperdrive. The class in general likely required several hundred crew, but the Morenia specifically was crewed by mainly droids after a protocol droid on board was ordered to make the ship more profitable, and did so by throwing all of its organic command staff out the airlocks and replacing them with more droids like herself. The ship could probably carry around 1,000 tons of cargo, 1 year of consumables, and 10,000 passengers based on comparisons to other vessels, but it's impossible to say for sure. If you were looking to buy a Gallifrey casino cruiser of your own, it would probably run you around 15 million credits new or 7 million used. I don't think we know how much it costs to visit the Morenia itself, though. It seems like the kind of place where they'll nickel and dime you for every little thing, where it'll be a couple hundred credits to park your ship, another couple hundred if you want to book a room instead of sleeping on your ship, a whole bunch for food and entertainment, and of course, however much you choose to gamble. I doubt they offered specific vacation packages or plans, given their secret nature, but an average visit would probably cost you around 1,000 credits, not including any gambling wins or losses. Halcyon. While the real-world Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel was a bit of a flop, its in-universe counterpart was by all accounts a spectacular vacation destination. This, of course, is the Halcyon, a Corellian Engineering Corporation MPO 1400 Purgill-class star cruiser operated by the Chandrila Star Line. This cruise liner was a couple centuries old by the time of the Skywalker Saga era, but it was refurbished several times to stay fresh and exciting for new passengers. The Halcyon had 100 passenger cabins, which could house 1 to 5 guests each in moderate luxury. These guests had a variety of shopping and entertainment options available to them on board, with the Chandrila Collection clothing shop, the Sublight Lounge, an atrium with seating, snacks, view screens, and hologram displays, a lightsaber training pod where guests could practice deflecting blaster bolts from a training remote, a climate simulator where guests could prepare for the weather conditions of the next planet the ship would pay a visit to, and of course the magnificent Crown of Corellia dining room, serving breakfast, lunch, and a spectacular multi-course dinner. Cruises aboard the Halcyon also included excursions down to a planet's surface to visit local shops and restaurants. The ship was operated out of Batuu and carried passengers to destinations all across the galaxy. The Halcyon measured 278 meters long by about 93 meters wide and 62 meters tall. It had a ponderously slow Class 5 hyperdrive, and likely a top atmospheric speed of around 900 kilometers per hour. It was armed with 12 turbolasers to ensure the safety of its guests, of which it could carry up to 500, assuming maximum cabin occupancy. It could also likely carry around 2,000 tons of cargo and 1 year of consumables, and required 102 crew. The ship itself probably cost around 5 to 10 million credits new or 1 to 2 million used, but a cruise passenger would only need to pay a few hundred credits for their voyage. Assuming the Halcyon had similar prices to the real-world Galactic Star Cruiser hotel, a visit would cost a minimum of 4,800 credits for a 2-person, 2-night cruise in the entry-level cabins. More guests per group, longer stays, and nicer accommodations would cause the price to skyrocket, though it is worth noting that nearly all food, entertainment, and other parts of the Halcyon experience were included in the price. Tafanda Bay. For a very different style of vacation, galactic travelers could enjoy a visit to the Tafanda Bay, an Ithorian herd ship hovering above the sacred jungles of Ithor. The Ithorians were a highly spiritual culture, and as soon as they developed repulsor lift technologies, they began building hovering cities to live in to protect the planet's natural landscape from their presence. Thousands of years later, the modern equivalents of these floating cities make for fairly popular vacation destinations for tourists across the galaxy, and the Tafanda Bay is the finest of them all. As far as I can tell, most herd ships were unique, though there were a couple of standard, mass-produced classes of them. But the basic structure of a herd ship was pretty much always the same. They were shaped like a giant bowl, with repulsor lift banks to hold it aloft, lower observation decks to view the jungle below, sensors and various speeder bays at the bottom, a great atrium with a sample of Ithorian jungle inside around the rim, and then a central superstructure with landing platforms, upper observation decks, a set of botanical domes, and a small cityscape in the center. The exterior of the Tafanda Bay and many other herd ships were covered in local fauna, though this was not present on all herd ships. Visitors could check out the botanical domes to experience a small slice of various biomes of Ithor and other planets across the galaxy. The specific locations represented likely varied by herd ship, and I would think they could even be swapped out for new landscapes periodically. The Tafanda Bay and other herd ships also had large trading halls to purchase goods from Ithorian merchants, but by far the most popular attraction was the aforementioned Great Atrium, an enormous open-air ecosystem replicating the environment of Ithor's jungles. Visitors hoping for a closer look at the jungle could also rent airspeeders for guided sightseeing tours. Of course, if you're looking for something more along the lines of a day trip and don't want to fly all the way to Ithor to see a herd ship, you may be in luck. There were two types of herd ships. The Tafanda Bay and many others like it were bound to the atmosphere of Ithor, but others were fully enclosed and capable of interstellar flight. These were used to travel the galaxy on a set course and schedule, carrying various exotic goods from planet to planet in their trading halls, and bringing a little slice of Ithor and the other planets that inspired each ship's botanical domes to citizens of different planets who may not otherwise ever have the opportunity to visit the real things, or even realize that they may want to. These interstellar herd ships probably wouldn't be exactly the same as their terrestrial counterparts, as I would assume they can't have the exterior plants and open-air environments, but by and large they would be a comparable experience at a fraction of the price and time commitment. We don't really know anything about the stats of the Tafanda Bay, but the average Ithorian Sky Yards herd ship measured between 1,000 and 1,800 meters in diameter, and was 330 meters tall. It had an unknown but very slow atmospheric speed, perhaps around 500 kilometers per hour, but a fairly decent Class II hyperdrive, at least on interstellar models. Most herd ships were unarmed, but some were equipped with 20 laser cannons and 4 tractor beam projectors for defense. They could require 1,500 to 3,000 crew, and could support up to 10,000 residents. I would imagine they could also house a few hundred temporary passengers as well, and they could carry 20,000 tons of cargo and 5 years of consumables. The price of a herd ship is unknown, as they were not available for sale to the public under any circumstances, but they probably cost a few dozen million credits to build. Fortunately, it would not cost nearly that much to visit. We don't know how much, but I would guess it would probably only be a few dozen credits per day for ship parking, another 100 or so to rent a room, and maybe 50 more for a guided speeder tour, plus however much you choose to spend on souvenirs. A 2-day stay at the Tafanda Bay could probably be achieved for around 300 credits, and a day trip to a visiting herd ship at your home planet would probably only cost the price of a shuttle ride up to it. Cloud City. Next up is the iconic Cloud City, a Tabana gas refinery turned luxury resort hovering in the upper atmosphere of the gas giant Bespin. Obviously this isn't a spaceship, as promised in the title, not even so much as a space station or airspeeder, but as one of the largest repulsor craft ever built and one of the finest non-terrestrial vacation destinations in the galaxy, it deserves a mention nonetheless. While the vast majority of the city was dedicated to harvesting and refining Tabana gas from Bespin's atmosphere, its upper 50 levels constituted the city's tourist district. This section had something for everyone, with casinos, hotels, museums, and many other types of entertainment venues. Tourists could stay at the Yerith Bespin, Lady Yerith, Grand Bespin Hotel, Hagard Park Towers, Stratosphere, the Silver Arch Hotel and Casino, or the Holiday Towers Hotel and Casino, among others. After taking a stroll through the Apex Overlook or Royal Park, you could see the sights with Cloudscape tours, or have a look at the Fig & Associates Art Museum, play a combat game in a holographic simulation of Christophsis, Alderaan, Coruscant, or Kashyyyk at the Grand Galaxy Hollow Park, or ride some roller coasters at the Sky Center Galleria Amusement Park, owned by City Administrator Lando Calrissian himself. Do some shopping at the Plaza Concourse Mall in the shopping district next, and then stop at the Overworld encounter for a virtual reality adventure on a simulation of the surface of Bespin. After that, if you're lucky, you may be able to catch a Wegsphere match at Cabley's Stadium, or possibly even a short one-lap pod race, as the professional pod racing circuit had a popular course that ran through the city. Of course, to accomplish all that, you may want to descend to the industrial levels to rent or purchase a vehicle from Honest Grex Speeders, which offered air speeders, cloud cars, and swoop bikes, though this business likely catered more to Cloud City's permanent residents than to tourists. There were probably other speeder rentals within the tourist district to choose from, and of course there's always the train or other public transportation. After such a long day of experiencing Cloud City's finest attractions, visitors will no doubt be quite hungry. Guests in need of some supper can look to the Cloud Dance Restaurant, the Twin Star, the very expensive Sunset House, the Well Done Bantha, the Hungry Beldon, or the Three Beldons Buffet. There were probably also dozens more restaurants, but these are the most famous. And for some nighttime entertainment, guests could dance and drink the night away in one of Cloud City's many bars and clubs, or gamble in the many more casinos. Clubs include the Paradise Atrium Lounge, the Careless Club with its zero-gravity dance floor, the very similar Zero G Club, the Blue Petal Bar, Lucky's Tavern, the Tabana Club, the Vapor Room, and more. The Vapor Room was not exactly meant for tourists, as it was much more popular with the city's Ugnaught workers, but it's worth mentioning for visitors seeking a more rough-and-tumble experience. In true Lando Calrissian fashion, though, Cloud City's casinos were its main attraction, including the Floating Fish, the Card Hall, the High Point Casino, the Trin Bin, and more. The three biggest and best casinos were no doubt the Royal Casino, Paradise, and biggest and best of all, Trest. In fact, it was within one of Trest's private gambling chambers, the Ecclesis Fig Room, that Lando Calrissian won mayorship of the city. Calrissian had managed to defeat fellow gambler Barpotamus Drebble in one of Trest's public gambling halls, so Drebble attempted to humiliate him by arranging, and then interfering in, a private sabacc game between Lando and the then-current Baron Administrator of the city, Dominic Raynor. Raynor managed to win Lando's ship in the first match, thanks to Drebble sneaking in a rigged card into the deck, but after it was discovered, Drebble was thrown out, and Calrissian won the entirety of Cloud City in the second match. You will probably not be as lucky, but you could still walk away with a small fortune. Of course, the most likely way to win a small fortune gambling is to start with a large fortune, so perhaps it would be best to skip the casinos entirely and just retire to your hotel room for a nice long rest. Radio Free Coruscant does not condone gambling. Cloud City measured 16.2 kilometers in diameter by 17.3 kilometers tall. It was unarmed and immobile, making its stats section in this video very short. An official census put its population at 5,427,080 organic beings. Droids were not counted. This figure consisted of just under 2 million Ugnaughts, about 394,000 workers in the tourism industry, 346,000 administrative staff, almost 500,000 factory workers, 371,000 dock and ship maintenance workers, and 1.3 million service workers, as well as 520,000 tourists. The rest of the stats we usually cover in this section are either unknown or not applicable to Cloud City, and most can't really be estimated, especially its price. The cost of a vacation on Cloud City is also impossible to say for sure, as it is really only what you make of it, even more so than the rest of the vacations on this list. It's an entire city, you just plan your trip around whatever budget you're comfortable with. You could do it for 100 credits or 100,000. It depends entirely on what you want to do and see. Kuari Princess. And finally, one of the best vacation ships in Star Wars is the Kuari Princess, a magnificent Mon Calamari MC-80 luxury space liner operated by Galaxy Tours. The ship was considered one of the best Mon Calamari ships built at the time of its construction, and many of its innovations went on to be used in the standard MC-80 Heavy Star Cruiser. Many of those were also used for civilian cruises, at least before being donated to the Rebel Alliance, but none lived up to the legendary status of the Kuari Princess. Guests aboard the Princess could choose from a variety of staterooms to sleep in for the duration of their stay. Standard staterooms had 2 berths, an ensuite bathroom, and highly adjustable environmental controls to accommodate a wide variety of species. Deluxe staterooms included that, plus extra entertainment and refreshment areas, and there were also 2 top-line suites with even larger and finer rooms. These were known as the Kuari Suite, and either the Royal Suite or Emperor Suite, depending on when you visit. At the top of the Kuari Princess was the Bazaar Deck. This was by far the most extravagant part of the ship, and was home to the 2 luxury suites. It also had a prestigious restaurant known as the Imperial, an executive nightclub called the Scorp Club, the 900-suite Estuan Theater, 2 shopping arcades, the deck's namesake bazaar, and a wide variety of various passenger amenities such as a daycare, smaller restaurants, meditation chambers, and more. This deck was also home to a small number of standard and deluxe staterooms. Below the Bazaar Deck was the Recreation Deck. This level had a couple hundred staterooms, but was obviously more famous for its recreational opportunities. These included 15 gymnasiums capable of being calibrated for many different species, a 6-lane multi-gravity running track, a 0G sauna, several wall ball courts, and perhaps most impressively, an entire 20-port slaff course. This was sort of like a bobsled track, where participants would ride plastic slaff sleds through an impeller field trying to pass through the largest number of ports in the shortest amount of time. The recreation deck was not purely for sports and wellness, though, as it also featured 2 casinos, a small dining room, and even a set of miniature turbo lasers for passengers to shoot at asteroids and ship-launched space skeets. The next deck down was the primary passenger area, the Lido deck. In addition to a large number of staterooms, the Lido deck also held the observation deck, the grand ballroom, the grand dining room, a secondary dining room named the Bistro, a holovid library with over 2 billion programs to check out, and 6 swimming pools, including one filled with ammonia and mercury. Must have had some Iridians from Project Hail Mary aboard. The Lido deck also contained the ship's main nightclub, Zeryl's Place, as well as a special droid nightclub for both the ship's staff and visitors' droids alike. The final 2 passenger areas were the Homthor deck and Welland deck, colloquially referred to as the Credicruise decks. This nickname likely meant that these held the cheaper cabins, and the much more meager amenity selection there supports this notion. Both Credicruise decks carried the largest share of the standard and deluxe staterooms, as well as a small dining room and 3 snack shops each. Everything below the Credicruise decks were off-limits to passengers, things like the engineering decks, crew quarters, hangar bay, etc. The Kuari Princess offered several cruise routes to take passengers to various locations across the galaxy. Arguably the most famous of these was the Relgium Run, traveling along a hyperlane by the same name, starting at Enderon, stopping at Marmouth, Eris, the Maelstrom Nebula, and Vikos, before ending at Mantuine. However, this cruise's fame came from an incident where the Kuari Princess was attacked by pirates and rescued by the Rebel Alliance, rather from the actual quality of the cruise itself. Personally, I think the better cruise option was the Grand Galactic Tour, which would stop at Tatooine, Endor, Bespin, and Coruscant. I cannot fathom what would compel a tour company executive to send tourists to Tatooine on what is supposed to be a luxury cruise, but the itinerary does somehow manage to make that desolate sand pit sound fun. Speaking of which, this is by far the most detailed look we have at the activities offered aboard any of these ships, so let's take a look at that. The Princess would stop at each planet for a week, giving guests ample time to enjoy their offerings and really get a feel for what each planet was like. At Tatooine, guests stayed at Castle Bachi, an ancient castle restored to habitable condition and converted into a casino and hotel. You could enjoy the resort's 10 multi-species swimming pools and watch traditional karuki dances at night. Guests were also issued seemingly complimentary land speeders to go shopping in Anchorhead, and could book bantha rides to ancient ruins or guided crate dragon hunting trips. On the last evening of their stay, guests were also taken on a luxury sail barge ride and cocktail party through the Dune Sea. Moving on to Endor, cruise participants could observe the Forest Moon's lush forests from orbit aboard the ship, or optionally take a shuttle down to live in a rustic Ewok treehouse for the week. As guests of the Ewoks, travelers were taken to hunting, fishing, and hiking trips, among other things, and had nightly fireside parties. Guests could also borrow T-16 Skyhoppers to explore the moon from the air. Unfortunately, I can only assume the Endor stop had to be removed after the Battle of Yavin, when the Empire began constructing the second Death Star in orbit of the planet. After Endor, or I suppose after Tatooine in the latter half of the Imperial era, travelers were taken to a week at Cloud City on Bespin. The guests were given private suites at one of the city's many luxury hotels, and could partake in any of the activities we discussed earlier. The official itinerary also offered parawing gliding or sky sailing. Guests could watch a Bespin sunset from a private cloud car, and then spend their evenings with fine dining, dancing, and, you guessed it, gambling. Finally, after losing all their money to Cloud City's casinos, cruise passengers were taken to their last stop at Coruscant, where they could find the finest arts and entertainment at the cultural center of the galaxy. While, like Cloud City, guests were mostly free to find their own things to do on Coruscant, they were also treated to a performance of the Imperial Ballet Company, watch the changing of the Emperor's Royal Guard, and even take a tour of the Palpatine Gardens at the Imperial Palace, an extremely rare privilege few got to partake in. With such a jam-packed itinerary, you can see why I prefer the Grand Galactic Tour over the Relgium run, though to be fair, we don't actually know what activities were offered on that tour, so perhaps it was even better. Regardless of which tour you prefer though, it is very clear that the ship offering them was far and away the best vacation ship in Star Wars. The Kuari Princess officially measured only 500 meters long, but considering it was originally depicted as an MC-80 Liberty-type star cruiser, and is still referred to as an MC-80 luxury space liner, I think this size is merely an error. The real size should be about 1,200 meters long by 450 meters wide and 150 meters tall, though no two Mon Calamari ships were alike, even those of the same class, so the exact size could vary. Not enough to get down to 500 meters long, though. It had a Class 2 hyperdrive and a top atmospheric speed likely around 975 kilometers per hour. The ship was armed with 10 turbolaser batteries, plus the so-called mini turbolasers that the passengers could play with, though I have my doubts that they would be of much use in a battle. The ship required 900 crew, including the captain, 10 command officers, 60 security crew, 392 shipboard crew, and 500 droids. It could carry 3,500 passengers, 5,000 tons of cargo, and 1 year of consumables. The price of an MC-80 luxury space liner is unknown, but it probably didn't cost quite as much as the standard MC-80 Star Cruiser thanks to its significantly lower weapons loadout and slower hyperdrive. Perhaps around 75 million credits new or 30 million used. Fortunately though, we do know the price of tickets to take a cruise aboard the Kuari Princess. Standard staterooms cost 50 to 150 credits per night, depending on their location within the ship and distance from the most popular amenities. Deluxe staterooms ranged from 250 to 450 credits, while the Royal and Kuari suites were each 1,000 credits per night. This means that a 4-week Grand Galactic Tour could theoretically be booked for as low as 1,400 credits in the Credicruise decks, or 4,200 in the better located standard staterooms, 7,000 to 12,600 in the deluxe staterooms, or a whopping 28,000 in the Royal suites. Of course, that tour probably cost more since it included so many extra activities at its ports of call, but even for a normal cruise, those would be pretty good prices. None of them include souvenirs, food, or other purchases, but for everything that is included in a trip aboard the Kuari Princess, even the deluxe staterooms seem like a fantastic deal. And those are 5 of the best vacation ships in Star Wars. Please let me know which of these you would book a tour on, where you would hope to go, or what else you would have selected instead. Please subscribe as well so you don't miss weekly videos just like this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. RFC, out.